Namaste, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of CoHNA Dialogues. The topic of the day is SB403. As everybody is aware, SB403 has been passed by the California legislature. It is now headed to the Governor Gavin Newsom, for his signature. As you saw in reports yesterday, there has been tremendous outpouring of protests from the Hindu American community in Sacramento. Over 500 people assembled yesterday in front of the governor's office to protest the signing of SB 403. In this special edition of CoHNA Dialogues, we are bringing a different perspective and a different angle to the whole SB 403 dialogue. As people may have noticed in the run-up to the passage of SB 403, there have been players from India, people like Nitin Gadkari, people like Professor, he calls himself Professor, but Professor Dilip Mandal, who have visited with Aisha Wahab. Professor Mandal has visited with Aisha Wahab. He has pushed SB 403 significantly in India. He has tried to influence American elections as an Indian citizen. He has been visiting both California and Seattle, and he has positioned himself prominently as a supporter of SB 403. Which brings into question, what exactly is the interest of Indian players in the passage of a caste legislation in California? To partly answer that question, I have the privilege of welcoming today Sri Vivek Rajagopal. Vivek is a longtime researcher into this particular phenomenon of casteism and anti-caste movements. He is from the south of India. He's based in Chennai, and he has done a tremendous amount of research on that topic. And he's able, and we are bringing him on today to give a little bit of a different perspective to people who may be wondering what exactly is the interest of Indian actors in what is going on in California. So Vivek, welcome to the program. Welcome to CoHNA.
Thanks for calling me.
Pleasure thank you for joining us. So let me throw the question over to you first. You must have heard about SB 403. I'm sure it's making the rounds in Tamil Nadu. So and in India in general. So give us a perspective of how it is seen from India. What do you think is going on?
Yeah, I think the SB 403 was seen with a mix of curiosity from India. The main reason is we are unable to understand why it is that a legislation like this is being pushed in the West, because when we immigrate out of India, the whole idea is that you are escaping this whole system, allegedly systemically oppressive system, and then you are entering the free world. And it's kind of odd, and that it has to follow you to new territories. So let me just that's one of the first things. Like, is the country so bad that you need legislation to to control the behavior of a micro minority? That's one of the amusing things, that this is a new phenomenon, because Indian Americans have been that I myself was in United States. And we never thought that we would come to a point where you have our Indian critical social justice find a foothold in the liberal West, which is about individualism and all of that stuff. So yeah, so that is one of the curious things. So in India, we are very curious about how this thing progresses, because this is only a start. So you have a non-discrimination statute that could lead to other types of India-style equity claims. So, for example, like disparate impact or quotas, things like that. So that's one of the most curious things that we see from India, and specifically from Tamil Nadu, we have more interest because of the primary role played by some of the actors who are Tamils in this whole thing. So these two things are our main. That's the reason why we're curious. So I'll just talk a little bit about this curiosity, where you have a micro minority, a law that only impacts a micro minority. So the one thing is, we are told that oppression, that's oppress, which is to press and hold, that's a dominant group is able to oppress another group only because they control the systemic environment in which this oppression takes place. So systemic means it's pervasive throughout the system. It's a medical term, right? It's the whole body. The whole body is infected or something like that. So that then you have systemic oppression. So that's really the what we are told about critical social justice. There's the opposite of systemic is endemic. So endemic means it's only one part of the body, so or one part of society or a very self-contained part of the society. So what we are if you look at the SB403 from India, right? So we find that Indians are only 4 million, right? In a country of 340 million, something like that, 300 million.
Mm-hmm.
So even if all Indians are worst racist or casteist or whatever as alleged, this whole issue only affects 1% of the entire population of the United States. So you have a case where you have a statute that is targeted at only 1%. So this of the population, but is adjudicated by the 99% who have no clue what's going on. So this is a very curious thing that is unheard of in any society. To drive this home point, to drive this further, you don't have a case where Palestinian Arabs are demanding legal protections against their Israeli bosses, or in the Muslim world itself, like you don't have a case where they push for religious denomination as a protected category, even though in Pakistan Ahmadiyas are persecuted. So no other group seems to think that they need legal protections for a small group that is not really concerned with the outside population in Americans. So in that respect, this legislation is a very strange thing that Americans themselves are going to find out later that how weird this is. And I think it's the first one. Just one, let me complete the thought. So you have, from what I understand, I'm not very up on the American law, but I think this whole statute is rooted in something called Title VII of Civil Rights Act, right? So this has a number of categories, like protected categories, where so yeah, thank you. Yeah, these are some of the protected categories. And one of the, so you have like, which is the main one, then you have color, then you have sexual orientation, national origin, then you have, you have some other things like gender, then you have pregnancy status, immigration status, things like that. Here's the point. Now, every American has membership in at least one of these categories, right? So, but caste is something that's strange, that only implicates 1% of the population, and yet 99% have to be concerned about it. And how do they do it?
Sorry to interrupt you on that.
No problem.
I just wanted to pick one thought out of what you said. The legislation SB403 first started off as a general purpose attack, if you will, on practices in South Asia. They then faced a tremendous amount of opposition from people who made precisely the point you're making, which is, why are you targeting a micro minority? They realized that, for example, in the United States system, quotas are illegal. The Supreme Court has decided again and again that quotas are illegal. So the system of reservation as it exists in India, at least in the near future, cannot exist in the United States because the Supreme Court has ruled it out. So SB403 has been modified tremendously from its original version, which was entirely about South Asians, casteist, Hindu. And after facing objections, what you see on the screen, I hope you can read this, is it says caste means an individual's perceived position in a system of social stratification on the basis of inherited status. I don't even know what that means anymore, right? It has gotten to the point where, and what I'm thinking is, and the question I want to pose to you is, for people viewing this from the outside, first of all, why are people in Tamil Nadu, for example, why do they care? Why is this important to them? Important enough that there are podcasts being run in Tamil on SB403. So walk us through, how does it impact, or how does it manifest itself in the part of the world that you're living in, which is so far moved from California that one would think it has nothing to do with the other. Why the interest?
Yes. Yeah, the first thing is, even though the language is South Asian and all of that, and that it covers all the religions, the way these this particular system of claimed oppression works is, it is reified or made real by propaganda, right? So in that case, the only real targets of this would be the Hindus community within South Asia, because the other communities do not have the backing propaganda or the material to, they don't have the energy to reify it or to make it real. That's my take on this. So I would not include the other South Asian communities, even though you can claim that in the Sri Lanka context, there was real discrimination based on the language and the ethnicity, right? So you have these cleavages, but the Sri Lankan Tamils are not pushing for this. So it's mainly Indian Hindus who are pushing for this, right? And even within the Indian sphere, it has extraordinary connect, like you mentioned, in Tamil Nadu, and that's due to the power and the of the Dravidian ideology. So if you look at the players in SB403, the real back-end players would be Tamils, and also the more importantly, the target would Sundar Iyer, right? So the Sundar Iyer and the let's just talk about the organizational background of the Equality Labs, which is Tenmori, and there's a whole organization behind that. So Tamils are involved in a way that other states are not involved. For example, Malayalis or Kannadas or Andhra, the other South is, I think it's unfair to implicate them in this as either a victim or a player. They just want to get along and live in a free world, right? So they don't have any extra push to do this, and that's typically so from my viewpoint at least. So it's my view that it has extreme resonance in Tamil Nadu, and you can see the videos, the content that's being produced in Tamil. Some of them have 1 lakh or 100,000 in American language, 100,000 views. So some of our videos, like the CoHNA videos would probably not get that kind of reach. So you see the kind of stickiness and the kind of engagement this particular topic has in the Tamil milieu. So that's really the product of the Dravidian movement. And here's one thing that it's very critical that I should mention. So let's, even assuming that this becomes a statute, right? So we're going to have a major problem, because caste, it's not like there's just 1 or 2 castes. For example, race and sex and gender orientation, it's just finite, maybe 1 or 2 or 3. But even in Tamil Nadu, there are 150 other backward castes. So we have groups of castes. We have 150 individual castes that are notified as OBCs, right? Then they have SCs and then MBCs and all these groups. So now, if a case reaches the American court system, right? So they're going to have to rely on Indian Gazette notifications, basically Indian law, case law, to determine whether either the plaintiff or the defendant belongs to a particular caste. That is extremely strange, because till date, I don't know how the Americans are really doing this, because they're walking into something they don't understand at all. So you could have, for example, it's very clear now. So now clearly what they've done in the Sundar Iyer cases, the Iyer, right? So that's a signal for the in the Dravidian milieu. That's a signal for the uppermost caste. It's not true. There was a period where they had good jobs and all that, but that's just not true. So they have made that like a target, and the others are sort of dissolved into the a general oppressed category, but if you had a different caste, so you, for example, a person from a very rich caste, but who was not a Brahmin. So what will happen is now then you have to first determine whether that person is actually notified legally as a backward caste. So in India, maybe Americans don't know all of this stuff. Everyone except except the so-called forward caste, right? Everyone has actually government-issued caste certificate. So now these certificates, now going to be having a valency in a distant Western liberal country. So if Sundar Iyer was let's say a merchant caste, I don't want to name caste, it's very sensitive in Tamil Nadu, but let's say a rich merchant caste, but he was not a Brahmin or whatever. So he could, and if he had this backward certificate, so he's completely immune. So he can say that, look, I'm also oppressed. So you're going to have this graded, these cases are going to be extremely difficult to prosecute, even assuming that, they get it right.
It's interesting you mentioned that. CoHNA ran a survey, right? We ran a survey trying to figure out what the knowledge of the average American citizen is, or the average American person is. Because as you said, if these cases come to court, you're going to be part of a jury trial. The jury is going to be drawn from a group of ordinary day-to-day Americans. So when we asked them how many castes there are, the overwhelming responses was 4. And when we told, and we gave them the options were like, 3,000, or, when the real answer is closer to 3,000. So like you said, the average American has no clue. They have absolutely no idea just how crazy this whole caste quilt is, right? And the way they kind of talk around it is to say, well, I don't need to know the specific caste of the person. I just need to know that it was based on a caste perception. That's how they get around it. They say, I don't really care which caste you are. I just want to know that you are being treated based on a perception that you are lower. Now that has all kinds of issues with it. Now, by the way, just to kind of, I don't know if there are viewers in Tamil Nadu who may or may not be aware of this. Sundar Iyer, even though his name is Sundar Iyer, when he was in Stanford 20 years ago, he wrote an article for the Stanford newsletter, Stanford University newsletter, where he basically said, I am not a practicing Hindu. I'm not a Brahmin. I don't believe in the caste system. I don't wear the sacred thread, and I am nothing. When they sued him, when the Cisco lawsuit was filed in 2020, 10 years after that, in the lawsuit, the California Civil Rights Department, which brought the lawsuit, literally had this line in the complaint. It said, upon information and belief, Sundar Iyer is a Brahmin. Okay, and they said the same thing about Ramana. Upon information and belief, Ramana Kompella is a Brahmin. They literally have those words in there. And then they said for John Doe, who is the defendant, who is the complainant, they said, upon information belief, John Doe is a Dalit, right? So we kind of asked the question, I mean, upon whose information and whose belief? What evidence do you have that Sundar Iyer is a Brahmin or whatever else you want to call him? And because we pushed on that, and because Sundar actually countersued the department to say, look, you guys are violating the separation between church and state by assigning me a religion that I don't practice, you are violating the law. And facing that, they actually dropped the case against him. Now, my question is, for all the play that this is getting in India, are people really aware of the fact that the case has been dropped against the 2 prime accused?
No, not much. This is one of the things that is not surprising to us. What has really happened is this case has enabled a torrent of propaganda. Okay, against basically Brahmins, and also against Hindu religion and Manusmriti and all of this stuff. So yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that Sundar Iyer had to it did not make a difference what his actual beliefs were, and that whatever the birth category that he was assigned at birth is now the primary lens through which the American state was prepared to look at him. That is just startling. this is going to be a major issue, for Americans themselves. So in that way, I think what you guys should, in America, Indians living in America should really sound the warning that, this is completely out of hand. Secondly, you mentioned that Sundar Iyer had to, like he was not a temple goer, right? Something like that. So he was not really.
He was a declared atheist.
Okay. Oh,
yeah, he was a declared atheist. He basically said, "I don't believe in religion."
See, it made no difference. It made no difference.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, that is just completely un-American, right? So what you're born is what you're stuck with. Now, same thing is like, it's number one, it's a little bit tragic that he had to reveal his personal lifestyle, like his personal beliefs about religion and all that. I don't wear a sacred thread and all of that stuff to defend himself. But he did what he had to do. But let's say, the opposite side may just think that, oh, we got the wrong guy this time. So next time we'll get a guy who actually goes to a temple. So it's something that, just the fact that you go to a temple or, you practice some faith should not automatically incriminate you, right? So that's another thing that is not done in any American law except this particular law. So this is very crazy that we see, even in India, it's not done, to be honest. So in India today, like even though Tamil Nadu is, has all these issues with the hate speech and all of that stuff, so they're not going to hold you going to a temple or wearing a patay or anything. That's never held against you in any court. So they don't say you are a believing believer. So or the person who has to exonerate himself has to like say that I don't actually do these things. Yeah. This is just crazy. Second, one more. I'll just add one more thing, which is very dangerous. Is so let's say a person who is just like Sundar, but who has a certificate, an official government certificate from India, right? As a backward. So everything remains constant. Like everything else remains the same, except this person has a certificate. Then I think that would be a clinching argument in the US court. He can just say, look, it doesn't matter what I do. I have been declared as also oppressed. So that cannot be challenged, because it means that the Indian government has looked at all the circumstances and decided that this person's birth entitles him to certain immunities. So these types of immunities that are provided by the Indian identification of caste, right, are going to be valid in American court. How can a US court disregard that? Because they are regarding the Indian structures, right? So if they regard the Indian structures, they cannot say no. We don't regard the certificate.
Well, so in reality, it doesn't work that way, though. In reality, in American courts, it simply doesn't work that way. They are under no obligation to accept, for example, an Indian certificate. And in any case, if it applies to a second generation American, somebody who is born in the United States and therefore has nothing to do with India, has no caste certificate or anything like that, but that person can also be targeted for. So there are very complicated situations with SB403, and eventually we are pretty confident that this is going to get sorted out in the courts. But give our audience a view, a perspective, if you will, from where you sit, of how much the Dravidian philosophy has influenced this whole notion of, casteism and anti-Brahmanism and all of that stuff, which is the unsaid, it is the unwritten driver behind a lot of this. And you have done a lot of research into that phenomenon, right? So give us maybe a 30,000-foot view, so our American viewers can kind of get a sense for where this is coming from.
Yes, for myself, my background as a blogger and I call myself a discourse analyst. So I analyze the trends and the discourse, what is actually communicated to the people rather than what is seen from the outside. So I've been monitoring various trends in the discourse space, and particularly after Corona, I'm fairly deep into the Tamil discourse space, partly out of curiosity and partly out of just complete shock at what the actual discourse and how violent and how hateful the actual discourse is in the Tamil space. So that's really a what do you call it, a revelation for me. Okay, speaking from that viewpoint, I observed this particular case of SB403. He was very interested in you can see a lot of interest in the Tamil Indian circles, and you have, like you said, there are people from India who go and drive this agenda. So at the bottom line of the Dravidian discourse is, there's a call for social justice, self-respect, and all of that, which no one really opposes, right? But there's a certain type of directed animosity, hatred, and hostility towards the Tamil Brahmin. Okay, so this is unmistakable in every speech and every artistic production that I've seen that is related to the Dravidian movement. So, for those who don't know, the Dravidian movement is the ruling. You can call it the ruling ideology of Tamil Nadu, which is one of the powerful states in India, and a lot of the social justice arguments and the material is rooted in this particular state. So from my viewpoint, so since I cannot read other languages like Marathi and Bengali, so but I don't see any evidence that this is so intense in other parts of India. So Tamil Nadu is really interested in this stuff. So now is it an accident that Sundar Iyer was picked as the target? There are hundreds of Indian. There are hundreds of Indian executives in California. So I don't think it's an accident. And I don't think it's an accident that, Equality Labs and the back end is also headed by a Tamil. And so it's like, they're just chasing each other, like the hunter and the hunter, it's like a chasing. That's the view that I'm getting, because there's no real reason. The case was thrown out, and that the throwing out was not even commented upon. So people still think that this case is ongoing, or they got away, things like that. So the intensity of the propaganda when the case was still on is completely it just peters off, and then people don't see the conclusion of the case. So that's really another issue. Second, I see a lot of the normal Dravidian talking points. So there was a video in RNC, a Tamil channel, which has over 100,000 views. And one of the persons there was from Ambedkar Study Circle, Ambedkar King, which is, they've
the Karthikeyan video.
Right. So you have Ambedkar and Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
So they just done an allyship type of thing there. And that video, I see a lot of talking points. For example, one of the microaggressions, or one of the behaviors that he talked about was, I'll just mention three of them. Okay, it's very interesting. So first one was Sundar Iyer changed his LinkedIn name from Sundar Iyer to Sundar I. So they noticed that, and they say it's in the archive. You can go and check. So that is a typical Dravidian talking point. So the fact that he had to change his I is seen as a type of admission of guilt. That's very strange. Second was, there are some tropes. Tropes are cultural things, that accusations and things that are commonly seen. One of the problems, he said, was some of the respondents that these the Ambedkar and King study circle, which is Tamil, which at least the person we're talking was Tamil, was that some upper caste guy just put his hand over the shoulder of somebody, and that he was feeling his shoulder for like a sacred thread, right? So that's an evidence of that he was trying to
identify the caste.
Identify the caste. So that is another Dravidian thing. So this is it comes in the form of various canards, like for example cricket, like the cricket selectors put their hands and and the feel for that. So things like that. So then the third one was this serving of vegetarian food, and non-availability of meat dishes in some of the luncheons. So these are seen as some types of discrimination or evidences of discrimination. So one of the problems is this SB403 is going to do is, it's going to now make people wary of each other, right? Indians. So previously they didn't really care. Like now the majority didn't care. Now, due to the effort of a tiny minority, maybe no more than 10 people, okay, but with the backing of a big political movement, they're putting the entire community into a place where you have to be wary of something for the exact same reason that what's his name? Sundar Iyer could not get away by actually stating what his beliefs are. Your actual identity, birth identity, is the key, which means that you cannot have normal social interactions based on people's revealed preferences. You have to take into account what the birth is, right? This is completely new to the Indian diaspora in United States, as far as I know. So these are some of the things, and then I also saw some of the points that are made. The power of Tamil social media is how frequently they talk, right? So the videos upon videos and upon videos. The actual content, it's packaged in such a nice form that it's people don't really see it entering their heads. For example, one of the points was now what is the SB403? What is it? So it's a bill to outlaw discrimination based on, let's say, caste. So the opposite of that is something nobody can oppose, which is to support discrimination on the basis of caste. Now, none of us support discrimination on the basis of caste, right? So we want to be decent human beings, and we want to build empathy and teach our children to be empathetic to others, and we want to explore the world and also support those who are really disprivileged and all that stuff. So, but when packaged like that, when the word is, you're gonna not. That's how it sails through these political committees, because you cannot really oppose that. Do you support discriminate, because it also is linked to the race issue. So you can't.
It's interesting you mentioned that. It's interesting you mentioned that, because a couple of things. One is, repeatedly when the discourse happens about SB403, repeatedly the argument is exactly the one that you're pointing out, which is the only people who oppose SB403 are those who want to discriminate. Right? Now, this is an argument which has been borrowed from several progressive movements in the United States. So one example of that was, there was a raging debate about abortion, right? The right to choose, right to abortion, and so on. And one of the arguments that was posed was, the only people who oppose a ban on abortion are the ones who want to kill babies, right? So it's just borrowed from that same argument. The only people who oppose laws, protecting unions, are the ones who want to exploit unions, right? So by deliberately mischaracterizing opposition as somebody who is wanting to do that, they try. I mean, but people see through that. I mean, it's not like everybody. Now, here are some interesting. I watched the video that you're talking about, the one that Karthikeyan is, the Ambedkar King Karthikeyan stuff is talking about. And there are a couple of things that they did not mention, which might be useful for Tamil readers, Tamil listeners. One of the things he talked about was, they need to give him monetary compensation because they cut his salary and they didn't give him money. It's a matter of public record that John Doe, the one who made the complaint, made an annual salary of $4 million for at least 3 known years. He's been paid that much. Now, just to translate it into Indian rupees, that is $40 lakh. Oh,
goodness.
320 crore. No, actually 3,200 crore rupees.
Wow.
Right?
I think
it's 40 lakhs, right? We're talking about 40 lakhs, right? Which is 4 crores. He was paid 4 million.
Okay.
Right? At 4 million, he's making 40 lakhs, right? Which is 0.4 crores times 80. It is 32 crores.
Yes, something like that.
He made 32 crore rupees in salary. And the accusation was he did not get a $5,000 promotion. $5,000 increase. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not.
I mean, if you see the data, I mean, if you see the facts behind the case, it's amazing. Now, what is interesting is, obviously, from what you're describing to me, it looks like there is a large section of a political movement in southern India that is kind of using this case as a way to drum up support for their political agenda. Is that a fair statement? Or am I exaggerating?
Yeah, see, no, you're not exaggerating. So if you look at the actual facts of the social positions, relative social positions of, let's say, Sundar Iyer, right? So it's Americans can be see they play on the compassion and the the lack of curiosity. So if you look at Sundar Iyer's caste in Tamil Nadu, so they have zero MLAs. So this was which means that in the US, I think congressman, right, state congressman. So you have, and also almost I think 1 out of the 40 MPs is a communist. So this I'm not sure about that, but the fact that this particular elections threw up zero representation for Brahmins as in the political sphere, and that is not accidental. This is a product of years and years of de facto exclusion of Brahmins from power positions. So they keep talking about we are not about Brahmins, about Brahminism, but all the other upper castes, who are also did the oppression, so they are all well represented. So it's only the Brahmins who are excluded. So there is that that lie is exposed there. So you don't have. So when he say he's from a dominant caste or he's from oppressive caste, it's not true, based on the last 100 years of Tamil Nadu history, right? And it's not just politics. They are out of like government jobs, police, major spheres of the social control and all of this stuff, and so nobody in Tamil Nadu believe that Sundar Iyer is from a dominant caste or who is able to dominate the thing. The so-called oppressive, control the oppressive mechanisms and all that. So another thing that that interview you might have missed is one thing is like, why are you so? This is not about. There are like talking points that sound very nice. This is not a fight between castes. It's a fight between justice and injustice. So these are like platitudes, but they have a lot of resonance. So what they miss is they're introducing cleavages, hard cleavages in a society that had soft cleavages at best. So this is not a new technique. So you look at Rwanda, for example. One of the reasons that you had this issue was the colonizers issued ID cards. It was a fairly flexible thing, Hutus and Tutsis. They started when you issue ID cards and lock one person to a birth position, irrespective of what he does, like Sundar Iyer has been targeted. Then politics builds along those cleavages, and this is. I'm sorry to say, but I don't see this in other states. So this may be unique to us, to our political movement. So it doesn't matter a Brahmin, Tamil Brahmin. So many accomplished Tamil Brahmins are there. So many liberals. It does not matter how liberal you are. No, I felt it myself. So I'm fairly liberal. So, and not fairly, I'm completely liberal. I don't hold on. I want equality in spaces where others would oppose me. But even I can't escape this. Like, you are what you are. So even a communist Brahmin is still excluded from the Dravidian movement, for example, right? So that's a pure racial exclusion. And secondly, one more thing was he said that okay, why do you care? It's only a protection. We are also fighting for Hindus. Like, we are also Hindus. And we are just fighting for, we want to strengthen our society. And if there are false cases, you also have judicial recourse. You can defend yourself. You have a court system, and then you can sue us back. So so this is an inversion that's also alien to America. So there's a concept of taking cognizance of a case, and also the issue of being innocent until proven guilty. So you can't say that, why don't you just go and prove yourself innocent? Right? Exactly. So it's amazing that America would do this to itself.
Well, like I said, we are reasonably confident that when this eventually hits the courts will see reason and it'll work out. So we are hopeful in the long term that it'll all get sorted out. So we're going to run out of time. I think we should have, this is kind of part 1 of N. So we'll have further conversations on this. So I think the next time around, we should be prepared to go into a little bit more detail about the nature of the Dravidian movement and where and exactly where that enmity is coming from and who is benefiting from it. Because one of the things that we noticed about SB403 in particular was Equality Labs is pushing this simply because, and we have said that before and we'll say it again, simply because we believe very strongly that they want to be the arbiters of caste. and they want a shot at the DEI budgets that are strewn all over the place, to walk in and say, well, guess what? Now that California has made caste a protected category, let us tell you what caste is all about. And oh, by the way, we are consultants, pay us $300,000, pay us $100,000 for putting this program together. Equality Labs is a for-profit corporation. It's not a nonprofit, it's a for-profit organization. So we think that's the end game. The end game is really, you always follow the money. So we are confident that that's where this is going. They are after the budgets, and eventually we have a lot of faith in the reasonableness and the common sense of the American people, and they will see through this. We have no doubt in our mind that we'll see through it. But what I am fascinated by, and what I think our viewers are going to be very interested in, is in learning more about the history of where this hatred is coming from. I think it's very important for people like you who have researched this, who have done a lot of work. Like, for example, I saw that that interview by J. Sai Deepak, who's talking about the same kind of history of hatred for a particular group of people that has become normalized in Tamil Nadu. Now, I grew up in Tamil Nadu. I went to IIT Madras. I grew up there. I grew up in Madurai. I speak the language fluently. In fact, in most ways, nobody can tell the difference between me and a regular resident of any of the Tamil villages. And yet, the moment I walk in there with maybe a tilak on my forehead or something like this, they're going to tag me as something. And I think it'll be very helpful for our American audiences to understand that dynamic, and how, when they talk about people bringing their prejudices from India when they come here, it's actually the opposite. It is the people who are so steeped in this anti-Brahmin hatred that when they come here, they bring that anti-Brahmin hatred with them. And rather than just give it up, walk away, and be part of the American milieu, they are actually the ones bringing in that hatred and spreading it through the Indian diaspora. And it's very important from CoHNA's perspective. It's really important for us to shine a light on that kind of behavior. And so we are very glad to have you on this program today. We will certainly have more conversations with you on this topic. We'd love to encourage our viewers to go check out your blog. It is, we'll make the link to the blog, realitycheck.wordpress.com, available in our podcast, in our videos. And once again, Vivek, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. It must be getting late in India at this point.
Yeah, we have a cricket match in India.
Yes, and you have a cricket match. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Sure.